Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me for today's video, and I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing a bit of a different angle today. I'm just kind of testing it out. If you prefer this one or if you prefer my original one that I've had in my previous videos, please let me know. Also, before we get into the video, my jumper arrived yesterday. It's really cute. As you can see, it's got ghosts on it. I think, like, I love ghosts. Excuse me. I'm into like hauntings and that, and ghost stories. So this just screamed me. I don't know if you can tell, but it is. I have got a little bit of a stain on it already, but hopefully it'll come out in the wash. Okay, so today's video is a little bit different. If you don't know me personally, a lot of people who do know me personally know this, but I am quite the bookworm. I love reading books. I find it so therapeutic. You know, I find it really relaxing. And that today's a really cold day and it's raining outside, so it's kind of like the ideal thing, you know, snuggle up and read a book. Unfortunately, I can't really do that because I do have to work later on today, and I have to go outside later on to go to work, but I'm inside, so I can't really complain. Okay, so yeah, so I'm a bookworm. My favourite books are the Lord of the Rings series and The Hobbit, anything Tolkien, but the most books that I have by a person are Stephen King. And Stephen King is probably my second favourite author ever. Tolkien's probably my favourite author, but the only books that I really have are the Middle-earth series. Like, I don't have I think my dad's got Beowulf, but I think that's a bit difficult for me to read because I'm not used to that kind of stuff. I really struggled to read the Silmarillion, to be honest. So yeah, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit and Unfinished Tales are my ones by Tolkien, but I have quite a range of Stephen King books, and that is what this video is going to be today. Me showing you my collection of Stephen King books. Now, don't get too excited, I don't have like every single book, but I have a fair few that I'd like to show you guys and just kind of give my opinion on them. Some of them I haven't gotten around to reading just yet. Some of them I have read, and yeah, so I'm going to show you guys the ones that I have read first, and then the ones that I'm in between. I'm currently reading one, and then I'll get on to the ones that I haven't read yet. Okay, so the first one, and this is actually the first Stephen King book that I ever bought, and I really wanted to read the book for a long time, and that is the first one that he ever did, which is Carrie. If you don't know the story, basically what it is, it's about a young girl called Carrie who's in high school, her last year of high school, and she's really horrifically bullied, not only at school but also at home by her mother. And then she discovers that she has this power called telekinesis, which is like the power to move objects with one's mind. And I imagine that a lot of people are familiar with the story of Carrie, but just in case you aren't, I don't want to sort of give away too much, but basically she is humiliated, and then she uses this power to sort of exact revenge on everyone that's ever done her wrong. There's been 3 film adaptations, one from 1976, one from 2002, and then the most recent one, which was 2013. I have watched all 3 film adaptations. I'm stuck with which one is my favourite, because I like the 1976 one. That's the one with Sissy Spacek in, and it's also John Travolta's first film as well, one of his first films, and it's also got Piper Laurie in. It's where a lot of like people started off, you know, people who sort of went on to do more films. I think there was a girl who, I can't remember her name, but she wasn't like a big, I don't think she was in the first Halloween film. I can't remember her name in that. but yeah, it's kind of where a lot of people started. And yeah, it was directed by Brian De Palma as well. And then the 2002 one isn't great, I'll be honest, but it is the most faithful adaptation of the book. And then the 2013 one stars Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore, and I like that one because of how modern it is. Like they they set it in modern times. They have it's very, very updated, and they have things like they had smartphones in, they had laptops, just kind of, it was obviously meant to be set in 2013. It wasn't like they sort of remade it in the 1970s. But yeah, the Book of Carrie is actually quite different to the 1976 film and the 2013 film. Like I say, the 2002 film, even though it isn't great, it is the most one that's more like the book, if that makes sense. So for example, in the book they have interviews with people who were being interviewed by the police, and they show that in the film as well. They also have certain flashbacks to like Carrie's childhood and how she sort of discovered her powers and that. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed the book, and I actually read it, believe it or not, in one day during the lockdown of 2020, the first lockdown. It's not a big book, as you can tell, but I was bored throughout most of the first lockdown, and that was and I read that book in one day, and it wasn't like I sort of read it all in one go. I did give myself like a break and that every so often, but yeah, I managed to finish it in one day. So yeah, my opinion on Carrie is very, very good. Okay, so on to the next one, and this is the biggest Stephen King book that I own, and that is It. Look how thick that is. So as you can see, this is the the one that's got the cover from the film from 2017. Yeah, I read this. I actually read this after I watched the 2017 film, and it is so good. I just want to give my verdict now. I think a lot of Stephen King books are good, but this was sorry, I'm just making sure I still have enough power on my camera. It could die. But yeah, so the book of It, it's a lot more brutal and horrifying in the book than the films, I think. Don't get me wrong, the films are pretty scary, but I think a lot of the stuff that is in the book they probably couldn't have in the film. So for example, the character Patrick in the book, he is honestly, he's so cruel. He's one of these people who you can tell in the future, if he was a real person, you could tell he could become dangerous and that. Yeah, there's just a lot more kind of scary stuff in the book than there is in the film. Oh no, I've just remembered, I actually read this before I read Carrie. I was just trying to think, because yeah, I read this when I was still in university, and I read this in 2018 and I read Carrie in 2020, but because it's been so long since I read it, I am struggling to remember some of the book adaptations, and some of it is so like I don't really want to talk about it on camera. But yeah, I really enjoyed the film adaptations of It as well. I do like the 1990 version with Tim Curry in, but I think the 2017 one is honestly great. I think it sort of captures the horror of the book, and it's honestly so scary. I think the 1991 was probably one of those, it was scary for its time when you think about it. But I honestly think the 2017 film kind of makes it look less scary, and Bill Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise is amazing, like seriously. And I'm not scared of clowns. I know a lot of people are, like it's one of the most sort of common phobias that people can have, but I'm not scared of them. But I did find his performance terrifying, and I found the book really, really creepy as well. And yeah, so I enjoyed the book of it, even though I can't really remember it off that great, because it has been nearly 4 years since I read it. And obviously Carrie, because it's shorter as well. But yeah, it has big thumbs up for me. And then let's see, so the one that I'm currently reading at the moment is Salem's Lot, and this is now, I'm, like I say, I'm still reading this, so I haven't managed to finish it. And this is a vampire book. This is all about a town in New England called Jerusalem, and they call it Salem in the book, and it's all about vampires. And I think one of the people in the town is sort of the head vampire, if that makes sense. There was a film adaptation in the 1970s. My mum remembers that, and she said it was really, really scary. It's been on recently as well. I'm still trying to get around to watching it on demand. But yeah, two of my uncles watched the original Salem's Lot in the 1970s when it was on. I think it was a 2-part TV film, and I believe they're doing a remake of it soon. I think there already has been a remake of it a good few years ago, and I think it could be Ian Somerhalder who was in it before he was in Vampire Diaries. I could be completely wrong, so don't hold me to it. But yeah, I'm still reading Salem's Lot, and up to now, my opinion on it is very, very good. Yeah, I'm not, like, I like vampire things, but I'm not really a big fan of Twilight anymore. Salem's Lot and the 1987 film The Lost Boys is sort of my top tier vampire films, because they kind of go on from the original tellings of them, like from Dracula and that. But yeah, my opinion on Salem's Lot is very, very good up to now. As I say, I'm still reading it, so I can't give my full opinion on it just yet, but yeah, up to now, it's really, really good as well. I just want to say as well, the way that Stephen King writes his books, from what I've gathered up to now, it's kind of different in every book. So there's so in Salem's Lot, for example, I believe it's sort of chapters, but then it could be sort of chapter 1, part 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And then I think it was chapters, so that was, obviously chapter 1, 2, 3. Carrie, I think, could just be parts. Some of it is written in quite small paragraphs, and then it goes on to a next part. But the one that I'm going to talk about next, it's almost like it's just one big long story, and I'll tell you why. So that is Cujo. Now, I was really, really nervous to read Cujo because I had heard of the film. It's basically about a Saint Bernard. If you don't know what a Saint Bernard is, it's a big fluffy dog, very, very cute. I love Saint Bernards. I would love to have one, but they're so expensive. Yeah, and Cujo is bitten by a rabid bat, and obviously gets infected with rabies, and it makes him he goes from this lovely, friendly dog to a psychotic murderer, and he obviously can't help it because it's the rabies. But I was so scared to read that, because anything to do with animals, it really, really, it affects me a lot. And it had two of my favourite animals in, which is a dog and a bat. As I think I mentioned in my Halloween haul, that I love bats. A lot of people do find them quite unsettling, and they're a bit uneasy about them, but I find them so cute. Like I say, we sometimes get them in our back garden, sometimes just flying around, and yeah, I'm one of these people who likes to watch them flying around. I feel alright around them. But yeah, so I was really, really nervous to read Cujo because it did have a lot of stuff to do with animals, and so I don't know if you can tell from here, but it's all just written in one kind of big go, like there's no chapters and that. And what's actually quite sad is Stephen King doesn't remember writing Cujo that much, because it was when he was going through some quite personal stuff in his life and it affected him when he was writing it. And he's always said that he really wishes he could remember it, because, you know, I think he says something like he doesn't really remember writing as many of the scary parts. But yeah, so Cujo was written, I think it was in definitely the early 80s. It could have been 1980 or 81, and then they brought out a film adaptation in 1983. Now, as far as I'm aware, the 1983 film adaptation isn't that well known. I think it's what they call a sleeper hit. I can't even remember how I heard of it, to be honest. But yeah, I read the book, and honestly, I just found it sad, if anything. And I'm not going to tell you guys the ending either, but yeah, I found it sad more than scary. Yeah, that is the one Stephen King book at the moment that I really did struggle to read, and I was really, really emotional after it as well. Some of the film is different from the book, I will just say that. But yeah, the book is honestly, it's so sad, but it's really, really good. And I think it's one of those, it just kind of shows that, like, you know, anything in a way could be a monster, if that makes sense. So, you know, because when you think of St. Bernards, you think of these lovely, friendly, big, cuddly dogs, and then Cujo just kind of shows that the one thing that the dog can't help, and it turns him evil, and that. But overall, my opinion on Cujo is it's heartbreaking, but it's so good as well. Like, seriously. But yeah, I did struggle to read that, and I think a lot of people could be a bit skeptical about reading it, and I'm not going to tell you guys to read it. It's entirely up to you, but just know that I found it quite hard to read. But if you do read it, that is your choice. Okay, so on to the next book that I read, and that is The Shining. And this was brilliant. I think, like I say, a lot of Stephen King books, pretty much all of his books, I think are brilliant, but I loved The Shining, and I loved the film as well, from 1980 with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall in. I actually watched the film before I read the book. I watched the film about, I want to say about 6 years ago, possibly more. But yeah, so I imagine a lot of you guys may have heard of The Shining, if not. So basically it's about a family, the Torrance family, who go to the Overlook Hotel, and Jack Torrance starts to become, he starts to develop a lot of almost hallucinations in some ways. You know, he starts to see ghosts, and his son Danny starts to see ghosts as well. And it's like every single person who goes to this hotel becomes like crazy, for lack of better terms. And yeah, let's just sorry, I'm just like, because I've read this quite a while ago now. I am sometimes I do kind of struggle to remember exactly what happened, and as well because if I go from like one book and then straight onto another book, then I just instantly forget what happens. And I think yeah, so I read this just before I started reading Salem's Lot, and I've just kind of started to know what happens in Salem's Lot. But yeah, Shining's brilliant. I actually, both this and Cujo, I would take to work with me, and sometimes people would catch me reading them on my breaks and that. And one of the lads who used to work with me, he commented on how good The Shining is, but I think he'd only seen the film, and I said to him if he ever got the chance to read the book, then he should do. But yeah, again, if you ever see The Shining in a shop, I pretty much got all of these books from Waterstones, by the way. But yeah, my opinion on The Shining, very, very good. And then let's just see. So I've got 4 more books to show you guys, and these are the books that I haven't read yet. And because I've just talked about The Shining, that means I should talk about Doctor Sleep. And again, I've not read this yet, but this is the sequel to The Shining, and I believe this was written 30 years after The Shining. Most recently there was a film with Ewan McGregor in, and it's basically Jack Torrance's son Danny 30 years after what he goes through with his father and how it's kind of affected him and that. I haven't actually watched the film yet. I really should watch it, but I kind of think, should I read the book first and then watch the film? But I will get round to one or the other. The next one, now I didn't actually buy this. My friend Ellie in work gave me this because she knew that I loved Stephen King books, and that is The Institute. I think this is a quite a recent book. I can't remember what year this came out, but it's definitely been in the last at least 10 years. And I think Dan from Ginger and Brown read this when he was on holiday in Italy a few months ago, and yeah, I think he enjoyed it. And just reading the plot on the back here, it does sound really, really interesting. But yeah, and there sounds like a lot of things that were in some of Stephen King's earlier books are in this as well. So for example, there's one of the kids in the books has telekinesis like Harry did. There's telepathy, which I think is kind of what's in a book called Firestarter. I haven't read that yet, and I don't have it. I really need to get around to having that, because again, that looks like a really interesting both film and book. And then the next book is The Green Mile. Again, I did watch the film of The Green Mile a good few years ago now, and I don't think I really understood it at the time. The film is from 1996, I believe, and it stars Tom Hanks and Michael Clarke Duncan. And again, I think it's, yeah, so basically it's about it's to do with death row, and I won't go into it a lot, but I think the person who is on death row does have some kind of power. A lot of people sometimes think, I think a lot of people forget that both The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption, which as the book is originally titled Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, I think a lot of people do forget or don't know that Stephen King did write those books. I think because we're so used to knowing him as someone who writes horror novels. But yeah, so I'm excited to read The Green Mile. I should watch the film again just because I think I watched it in school possibly, and I didn't really understand it that much because I was so young and I didn't really know what was going on. I think we probably watched it as like a history lesson possibly, I could be wrong, but yeah, I definitely watched it in school, and because we didn't watch it in one go, it was sort of like we'd watch an hour of it one day and then the next day we'd watch another hour of it, and I think if I just sort of had the chance to sit and watch it in one go, then yeah, I'd probably understand it a bit better. And then the last book that I'm going to show you guys is Pet Sematary. and again, I haven't gotten around to reading this, but I've watched the film of Pet Sematary from the 1980s, and I think it's terrifying. And if you know me, you know that I'm quite the horror geek. You know, I can, as you know, my favourite horror films are the Child's Play films, and you know, I can sit and watch those, and I can watch things like Nightmare on Elm Street, I can watch Friday the 13th, but the one scene that I find really, really scary from Pet Sematary is the Zelda scene. If you've seen that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Even the most hardcore horror fans, more like geeky than me, have said that that is the most scary thing they've ever seen in a horror film. But yeah, so again, it was a long time that I watched Pet Sematary, and it's also been remade recently. I actually haven't watched the remake. I did want to go and see it at the time, but I can't remember why I didn't go and see it. I don't know whether I just didn't find anybody to go with, or whether I just didn't end up having the time. But yeah, so basically what happens in Pet Sematary is this. Again, I imagine I might struggle to read that because it does involve animals. And I did struggle to watch the film, I think. But basically it's a family who move into a new home, and the cat is unfortunately killed, and so they go and bury the cat in this pet cemetery, and then this cemetery is somehow cursed, and the cats and all the other animals, and I think the people as well, sort of around there, do come back to life. You know what, I'm just thinking about it now. I don't think I've watched all of Pet Sematary. I've definitely seen bits of it, but now that I'm thinking about it, not all of it, because I don't remember it at all that much apart from certain things. But yeah, so that is my collection of Stephen King books. I really am trying to get back into sort of getting the motivation to read again. As I say, I'm still in the middle of Salem's Lot, but I haven't read it for a good few weeks now, and I really do need to get back into reading it, because reading books is kind of an escape for me. I know of all things, you know, you might think, Casey, why are you reading a Stephen King book to escape from the world? But you know, it's just a different read for me, and they're all different. They're all different to like any of the other books that I've read. But yeah, so that's my Stephen King book collection. I'm hoping to collect more. I'd really like to read Shawshank Redemption. I'd really like to read Stand By Me, which is originally titled The Body. And yeah, some of the film adaptations I've watched, a lot of those film adaptations of the books that I've just mentioned I've watched. I've also watched Misery, but I never read the book. But yeah, so that is the collection all done. If you enjoyed this video today, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you would like to see some more from me, because I would really appreciate it if you subscribed, and it would really help me out a lot. I'm sorry if I've seemed a little bit slow in this video today. I don't know, like, it's just one of them days for me. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be.